Microsoft, we have been focusing on integrating the accessibility into all our strategic partnerships and all our collaborations with the public sector and governments worldwide, in even region like Kuwait, UAE, and Saudi Arabia, and others. So we can ensure that we support the accessibility to integrate it under the strategic partnerships we are building with the governments. And at last, at Microsoft, accessibility is not an add-on. It's embedded, deeply embedded into all our engineering processes, into our training, our employees, and leadership priorities to ensure we have a sustainable and impactful impact across our digital ecosystem.
Can you just tell me a little bit, what do you think about this minimum requirement? You know, many times we had, oh, okay, we have to comply with the minimum requirement. Because you just mentioned about compliance and beyond. Which is your personal opinion on this?
For me, I believe like especially, I mean, in my job specifically, I think by design, digital development is the key because we produce services and we produce products. So ensuring that accessibility is integrated and embedded from the start by design to ensure our products are accessible. I think that's what makes it.
And why?
Because it's part diversity and inclusion, and accessibility is part of the culture of Microsoft.
Okay, and what about business opportunity? Perhaps just to wake up a little bit to the
and of course, I mean, it
participants.
Again, like when we deliver accessible and inclusive solutions, it enhances the usability for all, and it creates opportunity for all. And when we integrate the people with disability in our usual and business day to day, that makes even the business grow better for us and for everyone. I mean, the governments and the communities at large.
Excellent. So everybody knows the success of Microsoft, and we do appreciate a lot that you have this in your ADN, as you mentioned, but it's also a business opportunity, a huge business opportunity, because we attract clients. So with this in mind, let's try perhaps to go to the second speaker, and with the permission of the speakers here on site, would you mind if we mix a little bit and take a speaker online? Okay. So I'm thinking at you, Shadi, if you want to join us. So Shadi is a principal accessibility standards and policy manager in Amazon, and I had the chance to meet him years ago. He has over 25 years of experience in accessibility for people with disabilities, and has been on the forefront of international standards development. So Shadi, based on your experience and let's say your very extensive expertise on the topic, how would you consider, and what do you consider that should be done with regards to products and services to increase digital accessibility? If you can share a little bit from your experience with us and with the audience. Thank you.
Yes, hello, and it's very unfortunate I could not be in beautiful Jordan. My name is Shadi Abu Zahra. I am from Egypt originally, but I'm greeting you from Vienna, Austria. So thank you, Roxana, for the kind introduction. Yeah, we've known each other for many years now. It's a great opportunity to work with you again on a very important topic on accessibility. I would like to just maybe share about, from a personal experience, the topic is empowering people through ICT. So I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. I wake up in the morning as a quadriplegic person, somebody who uses a wheelchair. I start off the day by asking a digital assistant. I will not say the name because I'm not going to be a salesperson for any particular product. You know, ask a digital assistant to open the blinds. In winter time, if it's still dark outside, I will ask it to open the lights as well, to turn on the lights. Um, I will go about my day using smart wheels. These are wheels in my manual wheelchair. I still have some strength in my arms, so I use a manual wheelchair. But that's a motor that is built into the wheels of the manual wheelchair itself. So I am driving my wheelchair, but it assists me, something like an e-bike on my wheelchair, and assists me and helps me get to work. At work, I use laptops and smartphones and tablet computers. Um, because it's difficult for me to do physical shopping, I like to pick my own fruits and my own vegetables, maybe the fresh things. But the other things that are maybe difficult, heavy to carry, I will use online shopping to get them sent to me at home. Um, Water canisters, for example, or milk, these things that I don't really need to um, select by myself. On the other hand, whenever I travel, I take several hundred books with me, even though I can't carry. And the reason is because they are digital books on my reading device, on my electronic reading device. So this is just a glimpse. I could go on and tell you more about the exoskeleton that I used for therapy, for therapeutic purposes to exercise, and all these other digital technologies that are through my life and that help me every day uh, be an active participant in society. So this is how ICT, digital technology, be it online or offline, or all these different kinds of digital technologies, these innovations, how they assist me as a person with disability through my life. Now I will switch and come closer to your question. As an Amazon representative, as a representative of the business, there are over 1.2 billion people with disabilities around the world. 10 to 15% of the world's population, as we know. And quite frankly, we'd like them to be our customers, right? So accessibility is not only a nice to have, it is really a business opportunity here. This is something that we do throughout our products and services because they touch upon the lives of so many people with disabilities. When I started with accessibility in digital accessibility in the mid 90s, I was coming from the physical accessibility world. And to me, it was something in the future. The internet was just starting, the World Wide Web was just starting, and it was really not conceived. Fast forward a couple of decades later, and we are seeing businesses compete on accessibility. And I think that's something that is very a healthy competition. And I think that's a very good thing that can happen to accessibility. That it's not only seen as a nice to have, but it is something that is essential. So to your question, Roxana, you know, digital accessibility is essential for some, but useful for everyone. Like we make an elevator, we don't think of an elevator as an assistive technology. We don't think of it as something nice to have. We think of it as an essential way of doing modern buildings. That's how you build things. Everybody uses an elevator, regardless if they have a disability or not.
Thank you so much, Shadi, for this inspirational intervention. And just thinking while you were presenting and mentioning about the number of persons with disabilities. And we know that it's much more than this because persons with disabilities have their families and friends and I think there were some figures at that time which were calculated on the business opportunity that accessibility put forward. And if with this in mind, we add aging population and silver economy, which already estimates, if I'm not mistaken, 17 billion. Is that correct?
I don't know the exact numbers, but I know that we're hopefully all getting older. And so if you're not doing accessibility for others, do it for yourself.
Okay, thank you so much, Shadi. Thank you, truly. And let's try to continue on site here with the Chief of Communication and Sustainability. We have today with us Rana. I apologize. I try to be very technical savvy. Is not always. So, Mrs. Rana Dababne, sorry for this. So the Chief Corporate Communication and Sustainability Officer, she's from Orange here in Jordan. And she's engineer. So let's also have some of vision of the engineers on this respect, and in particular from the perspective of your job in sustainability. So I will try to have the same perspective of the question: what and how are you doing to advance digital accessibility, and of course to advance digital inclusion?
And thank you, of course, TRC, ESQA, and ITU for arranging such a very important event. And I will connect the dots later why it's an important event. So my question will be cascading the inclusion into accessibility. So inclusion in Jordan, as you are seeing, for those also visiting the first time, we're really very advanced. It's His Majesty's vision towards a very accessible Jordan, internet for all. We have more than 95 under the umbrella, of course, and control of TRC. We have more than 99% coverage in many of the regions all across Jordan, of the great efforts of everyone in government, in TRC, in the Ministry of Digital Economy, and collective efforts of all operators. For us specifically as at Orange Jordan, we really invested a lot in securing internet, more than 7,000 kilometers of fiber, 1.1 million households are connected. We were the exclusive to launch 4G Plus. Today, we were the first to launch 5G in Amman, and now we have really very wide coverage. So accessibility to technology is extremely important, as mentioned by my peers. And then the digital inclusion as well with the application, because ease of use now is considered inclusion and accessibility for all age groups, even for elderly. So we launched, for example, we understood that we have many applications. We gathered them into one mobile application called Maxit, just to make the life of people easier. As well, we connected with Sanad, which is the government application for identification and many governmental services. And we made the identification offline in an application called EKYC, Electronic Know Your Customer, also to make people's digital lives easier. For the financial inclusion, we know we are one of the lowest countries for bankable citizens in the world because of many issues and many beliefs. So we have our own wallets, which is Orange Money Wallet. So this is when it comes to inclusion and inclusivity in general in Jordan and in Orange Jordan. Hala, what do we do in terms of accessible digital services in the vast array of services that we have? So before I continue, we'll show you a video first of one of very special service, and I will continue afterwards.
The video, please.
Yes.
لك إنه بده يشتري الكاميرا الذكية الداخلية.
تمام، أهلا وسهلا، كيف بقدر أساعدك كمان؟
Surprise. Actually, it's a very simple idea. And when you think about it, really, I think all of the big corporates can utilize it. So I saw Ashraf somewhere. Ashraf is from Signbook, who used to be a startup at our own accelerator. What they do, what they've created is an mobile application that serves many things, among which is a live connection to a call center that have sign language interpreters. So when a customer with a hearing impairment comes to our shop, the shop manager or the representative have basic knowledge, and he tells them, no, please download the application to connect to this agent. And there's a three parties discussion happening. So the sign language is being interpreted into speech, and the customer is served in a very good way. So this can be definitely replicated in many ways to serve people with a hearing impairment. And it's really, I think it's very innovative. And actually Orange Group has replicated in many locations. So we're proud of this one. For our physical disabilities, also it was really a challenge with a huge effort of all teams. We have 2 fully accessible shops, and 42 has accessible entrances. I know the figures might not be considered high, but also it took us really lots of time to make sure that we learn about how to make the buildings accessible. And actually this would be, maybe I will put the other video earlier, because we won, there's an award by the Higher Council of People with Disabilities for the accessibility of the shop. So it's another eye-opener point. I want people to see it. So let's see video number 2. Video, please.
التزاما بتعزيز الشمول، تمت تهيئة معرض أورنج الدوار السابع من خلال تخصيص موقف للأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة، ممسك دربزين للأدراج، بالإضافة إلى شريط مانع للانزلاق، توفير الإشارات الحسية، منحدر عند مدخل المعرض، تطبيق ساين بوك للتواصل المرئي مع موظفين مبيعات، شرائط برتقالية تم تثبيتها على مدخل الباب، نظام الانتظار بالدور بخيار الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة، لوحات عرض المنتجات منخفضة الارتفاع، توفير مساحة مخصصة ضمن منطقة الانتظار مهيئة لمستخدمي الكراسي المتحركة، ظهور رقم الانتظار بالصورة على الشاشة وبالصوت، مكتب مخصص لخدمة الزبائن من الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة، بالإضافة إلى تهيئة موقع أورنج الأردن الإلكتروني وتوفير الشروط والأحكام على الموقع من خلال الملفات الصوتية. Orange.
So sorry, it's the translation is in Arabic. So additionally to all of the setup to have it physically accessible, we have as we said, the sign language availability. The website has also audio files. So preparing and making the website accessible also was another challenge that we went through, and we made sure that it's available. We have a full catalog for people with disability services, and they can have full access. So this is basically, in a nutshell, what we are trying to do to make sure that we have accessible products and services at Orange within.
Excellent and very impressive, and congratulations for all these services that you are providing. I was just wondering, so it's very beautiful that you presented the approach of accessibility and inclusion. We are still in a way mixing, because it's about physical accessibility and digital accessibility to achieve the inclusion, but you have it both. I was just wondering, is Orange proposing some specific packages for person with disabilities? For instance, if I'm blind, perhaps I don't need text, or if I'm with hearing impairment, I don't need voice. So do you have this type of packages, and are these by chance extended to the families?
Not to the families, not yet. It's a nice idea, but we rely a lot on the devices, honestly, and of course the operating system as well. But it's really important that we identify them, as I mentioned, into a catalog, just to make it easier. And in one or two shops, we have a specific table to display what packages do we have in order to make it easier for people with disabilities and their families to know and understand exactly what types of devices that they can have, the accessibility of the services. Special offers, not really, because it has been a discussion and really not, it's a challenging subject. And maybe if anyone from the audience have ever interacted with any country, any use case, any example in any other countries in the world, because it's a very long discussion with marketing. And no, we have really good offers. So it's a question that we can raise and understand from others' experiences, because generally the offers are there, available and reachable for people. And then we package it with the devices. This is so far. So looking forward for more examples.
Excellent. Anybody in the audience that can give us from another country a good experience on these packages for person with disabilities? No? Okay, so perhaps it's just food for thought for the moment, but could go further. So, Morten, I really apologize. I just want to ask your permission. Would you mind if we would invite the second speaker that we have online? We are pleased today to have Mr. Mohamed Ali Lufti. Mohamed is Director of Capacity Building and Advocacy in the Global Initiative for Inclusive ICT, which is G3 ICT, a very, very, let's say, great partner of ITU, and they have been promoting, as you know, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and in particular, Mohamed, it's an outstanding expert in digital accessibility, and we are very fortunate to have Mohamed with us today. So Mohamed, I will put you the same question to keep the discussion more fluent. So what and how you in G3 ICT are doing to advance digital accessibility and by default the digital inclusion?
Well, thank you, Roxana. Thank you for the government of Jordan, ITU, and ESQA for hosting us today at this very important conference promoting accessibility for persons with disabilities in the Arab region, which is very, very much needed. And we are witnessing great efforts and commitments by different stakeholders, particularly governments and private sector in the region, to adopting models, standards, and policies to ensure accessibility of technology for persons with disabilities. So, marhaba, my name is Mohamed Lutfi. I am from Lebanon originally. I'm based in New York. I've joined G3 ICT 4 years ago, but just to give you a quick background about myself, I'm a blind person since age of 7, and my experience with technology did not start until I was 25 years old. At that time, access to screen readers, as a blind person, I have to use a screen reader, was very, very challenging due to expense due to cost and lack of technical support. So until I moved to the United States, I had that chance, a real chance to have access to technology. Now, I recognized and realized that technology is something that's very important for all types of disabilities and what difference it makes in our lives, especially in terms of accessing knowledge and making our life much easier. And it made also other people's life easy, especially people who work for governments, because technology um, make bureaucratic process much more smooth and fluent. So and enhances independence for persons with disabilities in terms of connecting and interacting with government officials. Now, accessing to technology also helped me continue my education, and I have a PhD in anthropology from American University in Washington, D.C., and I joined Youth for ICT coming from the disability movement as a disability rights advocate, um, because I realized how important to um, use advocacy as a platform to leverage opportunities of digital inclusion for persons with disabilities and maintain very close interaction with policymakers, different and private sector and other stakeholders to make this possible. Now, as the digital technology and digital inclusion empowers persons with disabilities, I have to say that digital inclusion has been an eye-opener for policymakers, private sector, and many other stakeholders in all countries we've been working with. Since its inception in 2006, G3ICT has been taking the mission of promoting the disposition of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities on accessibility in general, particularly digital inclusion, um, based on Article 9 of the CRPD and other related articles and principles in the convention. And we have been doing this via or through different channels, and I can summarize them into 3 or 4 areas. Number one, offering advisory services to policymakers in many countries we've worked. We work closely with ITU through its representatives in countries to help governments adopt standards, policies, and concepts of digital inclusion to help or to ensure that persons with disabilities have access to technology, not only from the point of view of devices, products, and services, but also in terms of infrastructure, which is very important, because without appropriate bandwidths and broadband connectivity, for example, internet doesn't make any sense. It's not possible for a person with disabilities to use internet like any other person. And we have to think about it when we talk about digital inclusion, that we're talking about equality. Persons with disabilities have the right to have the same access and same quality of access to technology like any other person. So advisory services is the first channel that we do with the governments, with policymakers, other stakeholders, private sector. The other thing is we do work on educational and training opportunities, not from the point of view of how to use computers or how to use technology, but what it is that we should do to make digital inclusion possible. So we offer a training on explaining how to make websites accessible for persons with disabilities through our certification of website accessibility professionals, certified professionals, same for documents, same for built environment, and same for even intro level certification for professionals who are interested or working or enthusiasts, advocates for digital inclusion. The third, and this is through our International Association for Accessibility Professionals. So if and after my presentation, I will share a few links for you. I mean, if it's helpful, of course. I'm sorry I could not make it given the current situation in the world. Anyway, could not attend in person. The third area, which is monitoring. Data is very important, not only to tell us what's happening, but also to help us decide and envision what we should do, what strategies we should pursue to promote digital inclusion and leverage opportunities of and strategies of ensuring digital inclusion rights for persons with disabilities. And we do this through our Digital Accessibility Right Evaluation Index. We've done 2 editions so far, 2018, 2020, in collaboration with organizations of persons with disabilities around the world. In 2020, we reached 130. We covered 137 countries. Back then, not all countries have ratified the convention still, but now in 2025, actually, and it's a matter of days, we are going to start the 3rd edition. We are going to launch the 3rd edition of their index. And I have to say that in the Arab region, there are lots of countries who are now witnessing great progress in terms of promoting digital inclusion for persons with disabilities. We heard just now our colleague from Jordan, from Orange, and also from Microsoft about the great work that Jordan has been doing great efforts to promote digital inclusion. Other countries like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, of course, all these countries are trying to push hard to promote digital inclusion and ensuring accessibility of technologies for persons with disabilities. We work closely with governments, even though the data collection has to be done through advocates, organizations of persons with disabilities, but the role of governments and private sector is very crucial in this process for validating data we collect for the DARE index. And the 4th area, which is building networks and promoting multi-stakeholder collaboration and cooperation. And a big event we hold every year, which is the M-Enabling Summit. This year, and it's held every year in Washington, D.C. This year, it's going to be on the 6th through the 8th of October 2025 in Washington, D.C., where you can come and see what's happening in the world in terms of promoting digital inclusion. Amazon, my colleague, my friend Shadi Abu Zahra is always there. I look forward to seeing you then this year again, Shadi. And Amazon has its booth. And also, it's a very important opportunity for people to network and learn from each other, to exchange information. There will be a lot of presentations about what's happening, especially in new and emerging technologies, i.e. artificial intelligence. And we've been working on this through other channels also, which is the Digital Accessibility Standard Harmonization Work Group. And I'm glad to say that G3 ICT has its delegation at ITU. We work closely with Roxana and her team because we want to make sure that standards are made accessible for governments and they are used to promote digital inclusion for persons with disabilities, especially now that governments have ratified the Global Digital Compact back in September, and we've been involved in the GDC process since its inception in 2022, and we are witnessing this great progress, and G3 ICT will continue to do everything it can in terms of advocacy, advisory services, and building partnerships with digital technology sector.
Thank you for all this. Very quick, I just want to ask you. You talk a lot about the activities that you are doing through the G3 ICT, but I have a simple question. How do you see the role of person with disabilities direct involvement?
Excellent question. Yes. Right. Wonderful. Thank you very much for this very important question.
Very shortly, because we are running out of time.
Right. Okay. So first of all, as I said, their index is done by persons with disabilities. That's so very important for to involve persons with disabilities in monitoring the progress of digital inclusion. The other area that we are also we have started, which is offering training opportunities for persons with disabilities through the Digital Accessibility Right Education Academy Scholarship to help persons with disabilities become certified as professionals in digital accessibility, which is very much needed. Even the disability movement needs a lot of help and support to build to leverage its knowledge and advocacy ideas to promote digital inclusion. And this is something that we will also continue with through our DASH work group to help persons with disabilities and their organizations, especially on the grassroots level, to be more effectively engaged in advocacy to make sure that the Global Digital Compact is implemented properly and fully.
Thank you so much. So with this in mind, the last but not least speaker, it's Morten. So he's principal research specialist on UNU, e-government. And I will put you the same question. How would you approach this accessibility beyond technology, and how do you ensure implementation in concrete in practice? So
yeah,
can you share with us?
Thank you, Oksana. I had actually prepared some slides, but I'm going to drop it for the sake of time and pick up on a couple of things. So we've talked about the charter already, but I'd like to anchor it in a broader conversation about universal access. And that's not a new concept. Universal access was first implemented by law in the US in 1932 in relation to affordable and equitable access to telephones, telegraphs, and radio signals. So this is not a new conversation. Now, we see three elements when it comes to digital inclusion and accessibility. There's the access itself, and currently it's not about access in theory to infrastructure and devices. It's the relative cost of that. And that has nothing to do with the telcos only. It's also to do with how we as telco regulators do auctioning. We tend to profit optimize, and that will either pass that cost to the consumer or lead to less or slower rollout of reliable infrastructure. The second component is the skills and capacities as us as users of technology. And here we're talking about both digital skills, but also about traditional reading and writing educational skills. The last component is the solution itself. And here it goes beyond the website, it goes beyond the app, it goes beyond the transactional e-service. It is about the technology solution, and this is where the W3C web accessibility guidelines come in as a recommended solution to guide the technical development. This is particularly addressing not just people with disability, but the global user community. It is the foundation of good usability in our services. In addition to that, we should not forget the way we communicate. This is about the language that we use when we communicate with businesses or citizens or individuals with usability. We tend as government organizations to be bureaucratic and legalese. This increases the barrier for accessing services for anyone, particularly the most weak in society. The other thing we see is that the form and functionality, the look and feel of solutions across a government portfolio. We as individual consumers or citizens do not care what organization provides the service. We want it as easily as possible. This is also the same for businesses. Businesses don't want to be tied up in red tape. They want to do business, create jobs, create growth. So the role of government is to ensure that that is easy. So when it comes to accessibility, we've been doing some work with a number of governments, both here in the region and elsewhere, on how do we simplify the way that users interact with government. And that means that the individual service must be seen in a larger portfolio of government services. Look and feel across those services must have a certain level of consistency. Same with language use. This is where we see that design standards come in place. So if we're looking at how many countries have ratified the Charter for Accessibility, only 3 has not yet ratified it. The Americans have dropped it, but they have a mandatory compliance with the VCAC standard. Yeah? If we're looking at what countries have implemented, we are talking about 40-something countries globally that have legally made it mandatory for the public sector and the private sector in some cases to live up to the VCAC standard. Most of them are in the global north. We're talking the rich countries of the world. We're talking Europe, we're talking Australia, we're talking Singapore. But we also see that a number of emerging economies are taking this very serious by having design standards that incorporate all these principles. And to pick up on the last point made about, and your question about how do we engage the user community? Well, these design standards actually include recommendations on how do you engage your target audience in the co-design, in the user testing of services before you even launch them, and then regularly go and you do continuous improvement by listening to the people in the physical service center and the call center about what is it that people are having trouble with so we can fix it. Because that is not just good quality service. It is also good business for the public sector, because otherwise we have 2 or 3 touch points with our citizens to deliver the same service because we're bad at design. So again, the design based on web accessibility standard is key, but it doesn't operate in a vacuum. And the countries or the governments, the agencies, the private sector companies that realize this and actually work with this are the ones we see succeeding, both in a financial sense, but also in a quality and a customer satisfaction sense.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And actually, thank you also because you transfer a little bit to my second question. And in a way, you already respond about which is the biggest challenges that you face in digital accessibility and which is the solution that you propose. And because you were the last for the first question, if you don't mind, can you just mention your biggest challenge that you had in this environment and perhaps the solution if already in place?
So the challenge is the lack of holistic thinking around accessibility.
Thank you.
And the solution is to address all of them through the way we auction telco licenses off so we can get the price point down. We saw some really interesting examples during COVID where telco regulators went in and basically ensured that certain government IP addresses were now free of charge. Yeah, so that's a component you can build into auctions to ensure that access to government health, education services online does not get deducted out of your otherwise chargeable data package. And then look at service design standards. And it's not just the WCAG standard, but also language use, form and functionality across the public sector portfolio. Doesn't mean that it's a one size fit all. Because then we limit innovation and the business requirements that we need. But it's about actually realizing that if my old dad or my auntie, who is not a lawyer or an academic or even a civil servant, doesn't understand what we're trying to achieve, then the average consumer or citizen or business won't either. So it's a multiple of factors that you need to look at. So the design standards that go in and guide around this and then ensure that there is compliance with that standard is key.
Excellent. Anyone from the audience that may wish to share a huge challenge that they have with digital accessibility implementation? Yes.
Is only a guideline. Sorry, I was muted. I will repeat. Then
Here.
it's okay.
We heard.
Okay. The challenge is changing mindset especially an old mindset where they are thinking it's a guideline, a checklist, and that's it. No, it's not a checklist. It's not that way. But come on and ground and convince them. They are ministers, they are undersecretary, they are director general to somehow. But it's now in for us, I'm talking generally. I found it really, this is a challenging way, but inshallah, we are on it. And really, we are make changing anyway. It's يعني, this is
you.
the surprise. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
عشان الانترpretation.
There's many challenges, and one of these challenges is about mindset and decision maker, how they will do it for the future. Another one, affordability. Microsoft say now you are working in developed technology, you are going to use AI, but in the same time, how about the cost and the price of this technology? People here, as you know, GTP is different from country to country. So to access for this technology or to have this technology, you have to have a good, let's say, a good salary, to have a good GDP in the country. So affordability is very important. We have to think about the cost of this technology. So for Microsoft, for example, do you think cost is very important for you as a company? Think about profit, and at the same time you think about to have a new technology, but in the same time, do you think about the price? Another question in regards to rural areas, for example, Orange. This is a question for you. Nowadays, you say, I'm happy to see what you do in your shops, but number of shops, let's say, the cost of these shops, and as operators, you think about the profits at the same time. So you have an ideal shops, but how many shops we have? This is another challenges, but because in the rural areas, they don't have these shops, let's say, and they don't have these facilities, which prevent to have accessible for all. Also, we think about accessible for all. You say access, not only disabilities, elderly nowadays, all over the world, we have a huge number of elderly. We don't think about, and there's technology go fast and fast. They don't know now. They know they use the mobile, but they don't know how to use AI, how to use this new technology. So this is my challenge. Three challenges: the price, don't think about only disabilities as accessibility for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So let's begin, because I do prefer, I have actually, it's in line with what I was thinking, but I do prefer to try to respond. So who has an excellent solution to convince leadership position that, okay, Martin, please go ahead.
So what we see in countries that have succeeded lifting the level of access and also the quality of usability generally are countries that mandate it. And of course, you want to use the carrot, positive incentive, but to paraphrase my former director in the Danish government, I can also hit people over the head with said carrot. So again, enforcement and compliance is key, particularly in the early days, because we're talking about also a new way of government work with co-design testing. So you want to be very strict, have measurable accept criteria. You need to ensure that governments are aware that they will be tested on this. And if they are not living up to it, there's repercussions. And then over time, as maturity improves, both in the amongst the vendors, but also in the public sector, you can loosen up and do more spot checks. This is what we see has worked in Denmark. This is what we see is not working in Portugal. This is what we see is working in Saudi. There's repercussions if you don't live up to the standard. But because it's voluntary in Qatar and Oman, we see slower progress on this usability, accessibility front in terms of the service design. So again, India is a classical example. There are three different standards for the government to follow. There's one for websites, there's one for apps, and there's one for services. None of them refer to each other. All of them are different. They've just re-edited them. So now they're only about 100 pages each. Before they were all over 300 pages. Who in their right mind will read 300 pages of standards defining a government website? Not even the author will read those. So again, you need to live by example also when you as government provide standards that you're then asking other government agencies to do. To convince management, and this is the key point, it makes financial sense. If you invest in a website and nobody uses it, it's a waste of money. Then you have to maintain also other channels. We're not saying digital only, we're saying no more paper. Nobody wants to fill out paper forms. Nobody wants to process them. But if we invest in online or in the call center and nobody uses it, it's a waste of our money. So by creating volume through marketing, promotion, etc., we have an incentive to invest. But if the design and the quality of that service is bad, people are going to resist using that product. And that ruins our business case. So again, usability makes financial sense, both when you want to sell products on Amazon, but also for government to provide services to businesses and citizens.
Thank you so much. And just to conclude on this, and to share a little bit of experience, it was in Accessible Americas. And it was the same question, how to convince leaders. And it was government and end user. And one of the end users say, I require government to make an exception for paying tax for a person with disabilities, because now we have to pay the tax through the website, e-government, and it's not digitally accessible. So until government will not put this website digitally accessible, I will not pay my tax. And I have to say that it was, panic on board, and the person representative was requested to respond. He was completely without, so no comment. So yes, I do believe that some of this experience can be concrete and can perhaps be an incentive for government to consider. I want to change what I had in my mind. And I want to respond one by one to the two questions which fit exactly both affordability, which we discuss, it's absolutely key, and perhaps to see from both perspectives. So I will invite first our colleague from Microsoft to give her thoughts to the question that it was asked.
It's not me who put the prices anyway. So no, I know. Of course.
Industry, manufacturer, and private sector.
I believe inclusive design, as we discussed earlier, and ensuring by design that digital development is accessible. That makes the price of any product and any service embedded already the accessibility features. Like, for example, Copilot or any product at Microsoft, it doesn't add any price when you want to use the accessibility features. It's embedded already as part of the product itself or the service itself. To be very honest, like I've dealt with many people with disability as well, and many of them we have a lot of tools that are for free that have accessibility features. I understand about the devices mainly, but also the technology now is advancing with AI as well. There's a lot of features even, or tools or solutions that are available. Yeah.
Not affordable. So we are talking
Maybe we
about
need to follow the same
affordability, and it's just because I think we didn't had micro there. And for those who are online, just to say that, yes, indeed, it's important that some of the services are now embedded in the equipment, but yet, even so, for a person in a vulnerable situation with disabilities that perhaps didn't have the chance to go to education and to have job opportunities, perhaps here we can have a joint effort from governments to consider some facilities in the prices for industry and private sector to also consider some facilities in the prices. So to have this joint effort that we are calling on throughout the SDG 17 and everything, that everybody has in a way to put his part in order to achieve so. And I would also like to invite
I
Orange to
really have to
complement.
to interrupt here. I have multiple points here and there, but for the price, of course, also under the umbrella of TRC, we have one of the lowest prices per gigabyte in the world. So we have around, the average is $0.7. In the Arab world, it's 2.42. In USA also, it's around that figure, and we have another world average of 1.8. So in Jordan specifically, data prices are extremely affordable. When it comes to rural areas, of course, Orange Jordan has launched recently also the satellite internet service to make sure that if there's anything not covered in terms of service, is covered. When it comes to shops, this is why we are really pushing the digital solutions, let's say. Internet penetration, as I mentioned, is really acceptable in Jordan. And this is why we're adding, as Martin said, the digital skills. We're training people in rural areas of how to use technology to make sure that they have that enough accessibility, especially women. We go to all governorates. We have what we call women digital centers. We train them how to utilize technology for their business and to access a better life in general. About how to push leaders in general, honestly, culturally, it's very difficult. It's not in our DNA. Also talking about Jordan, to have accessible services. Yani, when we wanted to do the accessible shop, it took us lots of convincing and lots of time. And it turned out that there's specific standards of how to put the ramp, and nobody knew about it. So change of culture is very important. We're doing many things. Actually, we've launched a bigger umbrella. We're calling it Differently Abled, Definitely Enabled, just to make sure that we have all stories behind that. We have so many trainings for our employees, for also the community in general, on all kinds of inclusive ideas and accessibility. And we are supporting many things. Among those efforts, also just to entertain you with another hackathon, to reach the newer generation and to understand and to come up with great solutions. My favorite part of last year's International Day for Peoples with Disabilities, other than we changed the network name to Inclusion. So on your mobile phone, you would see Inclusion. We've launched a hackathon for solutions for people with disabilities to add the innovation part. So let's see the video about this hackathon. Okay, the video, please.
في أورنج لأن المجتمع المتميز هو الذي يستطيع كل تفكير أن يعبر عن نفسه. والآن راح نستعرض الفائزين.
صدقا هاي بداية خطوة جديدة لنا في حياتنا، رح يكون خطوة لنا مشان ننجز شيء أكبر لنا في مشروعنا. شعوري هو شعور فرحة أكيد طبعا، والشعور اللي غالب على شعور الفرحة إنه هذا أعطانا دافع إن نكمل.
الحمد لله لقيت نتيجة تعبي اليوم، وأكيد مش رح أوقف عند هاي الخطوة.
not translated, but it was really a very nice combo of letting those innovators work on accessible solutions for physical disability, for visual impairment and hearing impairment. My last point would be actually to add to our colleague, how to push leaders. It's really challenging, but there are two smart ideas that happened for us. First of all, because we're public shareholding company, Amman Stock Exchange now is asking to have the ESG standards reported to the stock exchange. This model can be replicated because there are specific standards, and we can include more detailed, maybe, regulations about accessibility. The other thing, today we don't sign with any supplier except if they have CSR inclusion clauses in their behavior, and vice versa. If we are dealing with an international organization, they require from us a full due diligence to understand that we are giving such accessible ESG solutions in general. So I think this one might shift leaders' opinions on a very good way.
Thank you so much. And to conclude, I will ask all of you online and on site to send one message to the audience that for you would advance and accelerate implementation of digitally accessible products and services. So, and at the end, and because you mentioned that this video was not digitally accessible, perhaps I would mention something that we, each and every of us can do to advance this topic. But first, so Jasmine.
Roxana, if I may later also add something, please.
I believe accessibility is not a feature. It's a fundamental pillar in innovation, even economic growth and human rights, of course. But I think, just like referring to what my peers were talking about, which is how we can advance digital accessibility, I believe the leadership commitment, as Dr. Mirna and Mrs. Manal also referred, it's super important to ensure we advance accessibility. Also, by design, or like the digital development by design, it's very important, inclusive design and technology, and especially in the coming period, because now we are seeing technology is embedded in every single pillar of our life even, and it's commonly used by even like the people I never heard them using technology. And of course, I think referring to affordability and many of the challenges we have mentioned, it's the cross-sector collaboration between governments, even NGOs, communities, and public and industries. It's very important to ensure that all together we advance the accessibility and to make it the norm, not the exception.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shadi, what do you think about? Which would be your key message, key takeaway to the audience?
So, involvement of people with disabilities. I mean,
participants online with us.
Are you hearing me? Oh, am I audible?
Yes.
Now we are. Okay, great. Yes, I wanted to say involvement of people with disabilities, and I mean that at all levels. This is part of the UN CRPD as well, the involvement of people with disabilities. And I think this goes in line with what colleague Rana earlier was saying about changing the mentality, changing society, really. I'm an engineer by education, and I love to solve engineering problems. I've been working on standards like the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines for over 18 years and things like this. But actually, what we're doing in accessibility is a change of society. And the best way we can do that is by not having accessibility for people with disability, but accessibility with people with disabilities. So have people with disabilities at all decision layers, also in senior management, also at decision, not just as a charity employment on the side or something, but really have people taking decisions. Only people with disabilities have the real lived experience and can help make real decision making and solve problems as needed, and that benefits everyone else. So even at this conference, I've been watching the entire day. I see very little people with disabilities actually talking about the topic of accessibility, and we need to change that. We need to have more people with disability be in the driver's seat.
Thank you so much, Shadi.
Yeah, I have
Rana?
to echo what Shadi said.
Can I come in, Sana?
Just
Yes.
1 second, I'm
Yeah.
trying to alternate a little bit the discussion immediately. Mohammed. So just
Just a
continue.
very fast closing note. So I need to echo what Shadi said. And the reminder of the Jordanian labor law, number 20, article 25, which says that companies has to have 4% of their total personnel for people with disabilities. And when we ensure that and make sure that there's organizations following up on this number, we will ensure the diversity enough to come up with solutions, make sure that every service is accessible, and come up with innovative ideas.
Excellent. And for those who are interested to implement this law in Jordan and beyond, please ITU develop a training on how to ensure online recruitment for persons with disabilities free of charge is in the resources that we shared this morning. So take a look and implement this law in Jordan and beyond. Mohammed, please, your one takeaway.
All right. Well, I will say just very quickly, and definitely I second my colleague and friend Shadi that we need to see more persons with disabilities involved in this discussion in the Arab region. And in terms of changing mindset, awareness raising is very important, but we also need to push our thinking and scale up our approach to go beyond just talking about micro issues, devices, services, and products. We need to think about on a macro level and encourage regulators, designers, and so on and so forth to think like inclusively from the very beginning. Because when we talk about affordability, stakeholders would say, well, I mean, it's very expensive now for us to inject accessibility standards in our products. Well, but if we think from the beginning about accessibility and persons with disabilities in mind, we will make these products, services, and devices accessible and inclusive from the beginning, and we won't have to suffer this issue of affordability. The other thing is we need to utilize some local strategies, especially the Universal Service Fund programs of governments, making sure that accessibility and inclusion are embedded in government budgets from the beginning. And the last thing I want to say is, I think the Arab region deserves to have its own regional standard. Europe is about to adopt its European Accessibility Act, and I think the Arab region deserves to have its own act on accessibility as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. And let's conclude.
Yeah, I'll give an observation and then I'll do my conclusion. The observation we see about the cost of complying with web accessibility and it being costly. There's no evidence of it being costly if you are accessible from the beginning. It is expensive to retrofit. It's like you forgetting the plumbing and electricity in your new house. If you retrofit it, it's a lot more expensive than if you put it in from the beginning. And that comes to my takeaway. Regulatory mandated design standard for the public and the private sector, supported by a design system for government website services that is fully compliant with said standard. That will ensure that common look and feel, but it must be underpinned by a governance and compliance model. Voluntary does not always work as fast as a little bit of a stick. Otherwise, it's like herding goats, yeah? A little bit of a stick will make the goats going in the same direction, even if it is at different speed. Over time, you can loosen up, but mandatory regulation that includes web accessibility, supported by a design system where governments can reuse the style sheets the PKI components, the payment gateways, etc., will ensure that over time, and then let the private sector find their own solutions for that, with or without collaboration with the public sector.
Wow, excellent. So with this in mind, I would say, from our perspective as normal people, what each of us can do to advance digital accessibility, to advance, let's say, mindset change, and to advance digital inclusion. I was thinking at a very simple thing. How many of you are sending photos in Instagram, for instance, or making a tweet, or in LinkedIn? Most of us. And how many of you are putting alternative text in this photo? So let's make a promise. It's very easy to say this cannot advance because of government, because of private sector, because the NGO is not vocal enough. But let's try to begin the change with us. And let's try with us to see what does it mean accessibility is not really rocket science. Can be simple, exactly as Morten say, if from design we can advance the topic. And if we change a little bit small habits when we make a presentation, for instance, in an accessible event, and the presentation be digitally accessible, or a video with captioning, just in case. So this simple thing that perhaps can together advance this agenda. And with this in mind, thank you once again for your attendance, and thank you for your excellent, excellent presentation and valuable information that you share. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you for this conversation. Thank you, everyone here. شكرا للجميع. This is the end of the sessions for today. See you tomorrow. We hope to enjoy our sessions tomorrow. 9:30? It's 9. 9:30. Tomorrow is 9:30 early morning.